Hello everyone, I just wanted to take a few minutes and explain lesson planning as well as the Illinois Learning Standards. I think a bit of an explanation will help you understand the labeling of assignments and projects in our course. First of all, you'll notice I'm in the scavenger hunts area because this is where it first appears. If you watch the scavenger hunt video, you notice that at the top or the end of the video, at the top of the page, there was some coding where it said Illinois.1.c that a few of you had questions about, so I thought I'd take a few minutes and explain, make sure that everyone's on the same page. So first of all, what you should know is that all teachers follow a lesson plan, and lesson plans can be very detailed and they can be very simple. A lot of times veteran teachers will have very short lesson plans only because they have taught the subject or the content so often that their thought process is all kind of stored in their brain and they do not need to write everything out. So those of you who observe with veteran teachers, you might not see the same style of lesson plan. But when you're first going through the system of becoming a teacher, we train you to write very detailed lesson plans. So this is an example of a lesson plan a student created in my class last semester. And as you can see across the top, there are some labels. Basically, the GL stands for it's basically a group learning project, guided learning project. But the underneath where it says ILS 3B2A and 12B2A, you're probably thinking, well, what is that all about? Well, that actually relates to the Illinois Learning Standards. And the Illinois Learning Standards are basically statements that we K-12 teachers follow, and that's how we design and organize what we teach in the classroom. It doesn't exactly tell us how to teach, but it does give us a framework of what to teach. So it is very helpful, especially when you are first starting out as a new teacher in the field. It gives you some guidance as to the structure and how you should or what you should teach on a daily basis. So as you can see, this is Caitlin's lesson plan. Notice it has different parts. She has her name on the top. This is for 4th grade. This is the subject area is biology, and she also has some learning standards that relate to writing, so language arts. She has an objective statement, which is basically what the students will be able to do and from the experience of her lesson plan. She has a purpose, which explains, why are we learning this? Why are we doing this? Here are her learning standards that she is specifically addressing by the assignments and the activities that the students will work on, as you can read them. And then she has procedures. And lesson plan procedures just spell out, usually in bulleted or list form, what will be the beginning of your lesson, how you will transition to the next assignment or the next activity. And as you can see, she starts off with explaining a topic, going over outlining and rewriting. She's going to hand out the essay. She's going to provide a list of definitions. She's going to read the essay aloud to class. As you can just see, she just goes through her thought process of how she will start her class and how it will, almost like a script of what will happen during her lesson. As you can see, it's pretty detailed. And then she has her materials that she's going to use for this lesson just as reminders for her so that she has everything ready to go when the students walk through the door. I'm sure many of you experienced a teacher who was not prepared and was scrambling looking around for items. So that's why it's important to jot things down, write things down so they can keep everything aligned. Her assessment is what the students will actually work on and complete and turn in to see if they can, if they're able to meet the objectives. Remember, the objectives were up here at the top. So she has created assignments or projects or exams, quizzes that show, that demonstrate that these students will be able to meet the objectives as well as the learning standards set forth by the state of Illinois. As you go through the bottom, you can see that it's, very detailed. And you too should expect to write detailed lessons. Now you're probably thinking, well, where do I find these learning standards? Well, the learning standards are actually located on the Illinois State Board of Education's website. So if you notice here, I went to ISBE and I just typed in Google ISBE to reach this website. And this is a very important site for all future teachers to know about. There's information regarding becoming a teacher in Illinois, information about our schools, school report cards, certification information, but we're going to focus on the learning standards. And you'll notice here on the right hand side, you see the statement for the learning standards. In the last year, we are transitioning. We are moving towards what are called Common Core standards. So as you notice here, we have English Common Core, And then we also have math Common Core standards. So if you are going to create a scavenger hunt that encourages students to learn math skills or writing skills, you can go ahead and look at the Common Core. If you are interested in, or if your scavenger hunt has a fine arts flair or theme, you would use the fine arts learning standards. Foreign languages, physical development, science, social emotional learning, and then social science. So these are the areas that we teachers use in Illinois in order to provide the framework of our lessons or what we teach in our classes. Think of it this way. Think of the learning standards almost like a citation for your lesson plan. It's providing credibility and it's giving you a focus in order to create well-meaning, challenging assignments for your students. Now, the learning standards themselves are very important to know because students are tested on the learning standards during the spring standardized tests. So if you ever wondered, well, how do they come up with the questions for the ISAT test, or how do they come up with questions for the Prairie State exam for high school students? Well, they actually use the learning standards in order to see if the students are meeting those goals that we teachers are supposed to be using in our lesson planning and assignments. I'm selecting social science as the first one I'm going to look at and just give you an overview. To find the actual statements, the ILS statements, you will scroll down to the bottom after selecting a core area. Again, I've selected social studies, social science, and you can select the Word format. I would definitely select the Word format because then you can copy and paste directly from this document into your scavenger hunt or into your lesson plan. So when you click on it, it'll open up a Microsoft Word document. And it is a good idea to read through all the learning standards and notice the transitions from when you are a young student in early childhood or early elementary to when you are a high school student. And as you see, the skill set, once the Word document opens, it becomes more complicated the older that you are. So the goal is that when you start off as a kindergarten student, you obviously start off with the foundation level, and then as you grow intellectually, then you are challenged more and more. So here's an example. This is State Goal 14, understand political systems. So social studies teachers, it's important for us to know politics and how our governments are structured. The goal, why it is important, is underneath, so you can read that and make sure you understand. If you ever have a student that says, why do we need to know this? Well, here's why. And then down below, you'll see it's broken into an A and a B and a C and a D and an E and an F. Okay, so when you scroll back up to the top, inside of the boxes is where you will find your Illinois Learning Standards statement. So if you have, you're teaching kindergarten, so if you're going to make your scavenger hunt geared towards kindergarten, first grade, you would focus on the early elementary boxes. So you see early elementary A, B, C, so on. And inside this box, this is actually what we need to teach. So if you're teaching little kids, this is what you would want to focus on. So when they're in kindergarten or first grade, they should be able to describe principles of government. And you would have to think about how you would get them to this point. So what activities, what types of assignments, what would you do in your classroom so that students could identify to you representative government, what are laws, what are individual rights. So it could be handouts, it could be a play, it could be a puppet show, it could be whatever you think will allow students to really grasp this concept. As you see, as we go through time, late elementary, middle school, early high school, late high school, it gets a little bit more complicated. So by the time they're in late high school, they're analyzing ways. So you notice, they go from describing and explaining, then they take it a step, up with middle school, junior high, because they have to pass the Constitution exams. But then we have to analyze. So we're moving up Bloom's taxonomy, the level of understanding and complication. By the time they're seniors or juniors, they're analyzing the federalism and individual rights, and they could be debating, and they could be saying why this is right or wrong, and so it's more complicated. So when you are formatting your scavenger hunt or your lesson plans or any other activities, it's always a good idea to have at least one learning standard from one of the areas that is either in your header or footer of your document that solidifies the importance or the meaning of your activity. So again, it's like a citation. You use the standards in order to add credibility and to add that importance, the meaning to why you are having the students or teaching the students this lesson. So again, feel free to let me know if you have any questions. Again, we use learning standards obviously in all of our assignments as well as in our lesson planning, and everything kind of links. So just let me know if you have questions.